any conflict of interest to disclose regarding this presentation. And if we look at the epidemiology of obstructive sleep apnea among the adults in India, we can see here the various studies they have found the difference in the epidemiology. So, uh, among these, one of the good study is by Dr. Sharma et al. From AIMS New Delhi, and they found that nearly 14% of the patients or the population in the community they were suffering from sleep apnea, and nearly 4% of them were also having the daytime sleepiness. So, which is known as obstructive sleep apnea hypopnea syndrome. So this is the prevalence of sleep apnea is much larger than the prevalence of many of the other disorders which we pay attention to. Next slide, please. Now, what is the basic problem in obstructive sleep apnea? Can you please click? Here you can see the anatomy of the upper airway. You can see here that in the patients who are having sleep apnea, the soft palate and the tongues it falls back. When the tongue falls back, it also takes the epiglottis along with it, as you can see here, as a blue structure here, and that actually completely closes the airway. And as you can see here, can you see the cursor? Okay. Can you please click on this area because that will highlight the area that I want to discuss.
Which one, sir?
Just click and it will highlight the area.
Yeah, are you able to see, sir, now? Oh, all right. Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
So you can see here that the area is the upper airway is completely blocked and the person is not able to breathe properly. Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Now the issue is how do we recognize the patients who are having sleep apnea? So these patients they have two kinds of symptoms. One are the nocturnal symptoms or the nighttime symptoms, and second are the daytime symptoms. And we have to inquire for both kind of symptoms when we are examining the patient for obstructive sleep apnea. Next slide, please. So the most prominent symptom that the patient and the bed partner they complain of is the snoring. And as you can see here, the bed partners are the people who are usually the sufferers and the patients they are the troublemakers and they snore loudly. And on the right side lower point, if you can see here, it's a graph of the snoring. So these people they snore loudly. The snore is not continuous, not rhythmic, and it has multiple pauses. And during this pause, as you can see here, the bed partner, they complain that they witness that the patient had stopped snoring, stopped breathing, and then they usually um, try to wake the patient up, and then they resume the breathing. Next slide, please. Then many of the patients, when they are having sleep apnea, so at times their brain is coming in the wake state for a brief period of time, and these are known as microarousals. And during this time, patients, if they are dreaming, then they can make some kind of noise, and which is usually considered manifests as the sleep talking. So the sleep talking, if it is manifesting in the adulthood and adolescence, should be taken seriously because it can be a sign of obstructive sleep apnea. Next slide, please. Many of the patients, when they are having sleep apnea, so they are breathing against the closed glottis, and that actually increases the amount of the preload on their heart. That means the more blood reaches their right side of the ventricle, and the heart tries to reduce the preload by reducing the volume of the blood in the body. So these patients they have nocturnal polyuria. So they go to the washroom for 2 to 3 times, and each time they have enough of the volume, contrary to the patients who are in the BPH, where they have difficulty in avoiding the urine. Next slide, please. Now, these patients, since they are breathing against the closed glottis, as we have seen in the earlier part, So that actually increases the abdominal pressure, and that increases the reflux of the food in the upper tract and esophagus. And these patients, they complain of the heartburn, especially at the night. Many of them, they complain of water brush in the night, and they say that whenever I'm sleeping, I often feel that whatever the food I had eaten or the acid, it reflux and it tries to come out of my nose. Next slide, please. Many of these patients, they are having poor quality sleep and they complain of loss of libido, so their sexual activity and urges, they reduce. Next slide, please. And in the morning, when these patients wake up, because they did not have the good quality sleep, and many of them, they also retain the carbon dioxide, which actually dilates the vessels in the cerebral area. So they complain of headache, which is prominent when they wake up, and it improves as the day progresses. Next time, please. In many of these patients, they also complain of multiple body aches, multiple joint aches, and these aches are usually muscular in nature. So, the patients who are complaining of chronic fatigue syndrome and also the fibromyalgia should be screened for obstructive sleep apnea. Next, please. And as we discussed, because these patients, they are not having the good quality sleep, so these patients, they may fall asleep even during, especially during the meetings, when they are engaged into some kind of monotonous activity during the day. Next slide, please. Now the question is, what is the reason for such illness? Next slide, please. So we understand what causes this illness. So if we, as we have already discussed, obstructive sleep apnea is the problem with the upper airway. And as you can see here, this is the upper airway, also known as the pharynx. And those with the little medical background, they understand that this upper airway is purely a muscular structure which does not have any kind of cartilage or bony attachment to make it to make the maintain its girth, and it is attached to the bone upwards and to the trachea and blends with the esophagus downwards. Next slide, please. So, as we have already discussed that this is a muscular part of the body, so we have two different kinds of muscles. One are the constrictors, which tries to reduce the lumen of the pharynx, and second are the muscles which are the dilators, which tries to increase the girth of the pharynx, and they try to maintain the patency of the upper airway. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, please come. So now we have seen that the people who are obese, they are at higher risk for having the obstructive sleep apnea, and one of the reason is, please click. Yeah, this is the CT scan of the person. On the left side, you can see the person who is of normal weight, and the right side you can see the person who is obese. So here you can see that by the blue arrows on the upper panel, you can see that the amount of fat which is deposited around the neck and around the parapharyngeal area and in the tongue is much greater than the person who is not obese, and this deposition of fat in the parapharyngeal area actually reduces the lumen of the upper airway, as you can see in the upper as well as the lower panel, and you are hardly able to see any area which allows the passage of the air in the lower panel. Next slide, please. So the obesity increases the chances for having the obstructive sleep apnea. But remember, not all obese patients will have sleep apnea. Similarly, not all patients with sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea, they are obese. So obesity is just a risk factor, and they should be considered into that manner only. Next slide, please. Now, one of the important issue is when not all obese patients are having sleep apnea, why it that some of the obese patients, they are suffering from sleep apnea. And the reason is, along with the anatomical factors that we have discussed, the neural factors they also play a role. We discussed that the upper airway is consisting of the dilator as well as the constrictor muscles. So these muscles they get the stimulation from the brain. So during wakefulness, these muscles they are maintaining a higher tone, but when we are sleeping, that tone gets lessened, and so these muscles they become pliable and liable to collapse. And the amount of fat is which is deposited around the parapharyngeal area is higher, and the patients who are predisposed to sleep apnea they do not have the adequate stimuli during the sleep coming to the dilator muscles, so their upper airway collapses and they develop obstructive sleep apnea. Next slide, please. So this is what we see when we do a sleep study of a patient with obstructive sleep apnea. You can see the red bars, which are the periods of hypopnea and the sleep apnea. And each sleep apnea and the hypopnea is followed by two or three normal breaths, as you can see next to the red bars. And if you go upward, you can see the upper six channels are the EEG, and you can see some dense activity along with the snoring and the normal resumption of the normal breathing. And this is what is known as the wakefulness. So these patients they wake up again and again with the cessation of the with the resumption of the breathing, and that actually disrupts their sleep architecture. So these patients they are having this kind of micro arousal for few seconds, and then they are again going back to the sleep. Once they are going back to the sleep, they again develop the sleep apnea. Then they again wake up. So this cycle continues throughout the night. Next slide, please. And this is what is shown in the patients with the obstructive sleep apnea. These patients they are having the lower esophageal lower genoglossus muscle tone during the periods of airway occlusion, and that actually increases the chances of the collapse and results in the hypopnea and the apnea. Next slide, please. So the neural theory, according to the neural theory, as the patient, as we go to sleep, the wakefulness stimuli are reduced. That leads to the loss of muscle tone in the upper airway, and that actually reduces the girth of the upper airway. And when it is, and now the respiration is dependent upon only on the relative amount of oxygen and CO2 in the muscle in the blood, and these signals they actually controls the responsiveness of the muscles to the hypoxemia and hypercapnia. So the people who are having muscle responsiveness, their tone increases and they are able to maintain the normal breathing during sleep. But the people where the muscle responsiveness is low, they develop obstructive sleep apnea. Many of them they are having the low arousal threshold, so they have small arousals during the sleep and their breathing is resumed. But the people who are having high arousal threshold, they are having long sleep apneas. Next slide, please. Now it is not only the obesity but also the craniofacial anatomy also it contributes to the sleep apnea. Some people they are having slender jaw, some people they are having chin which is placed backward, and these kind of craniofacial problems they also reduce the uh, girth of the upper airway, and that actually leads to the generation of the obstructive sleep apnea. Next slide, please. Next, please click. So as we have already discussed, when we are sleeping on our back, the tongue is a structure which is a muscle mass which is attached to the bony prominences only on the sides and only on the anterior part. So it falls backward because of the effect of the gravity. And if there is a high amount of muscle mass in the tongue, if the parapharyngeal pad of fat is large, which pushes the pharynx up anteriorly, and the muscle tone is low, then it actually blocks the upper airway. Next slide, please. So when we deal with the patient, we take the sleep history, we ask about the nighttime sleep, we ask about the history of the snoring, and we ask about the daytime symptoms, for example, the fatigue, the daytime sleepiness, and we also take the information from the bed partner, because many a times these patients, when they are snoring or snorting or they are having the witness pauses in breath, they are not able to say um, um, make themselves aware, and they keep on having this problem, and only the bed partners are able to provide the exact history. So the information from the bed partner regarding the nighttime symptoms and the daytime symptoms is of paramount importance. Next slide, please. Now, once we take the history, then we examine the patient. So we have to go for the general physical examination. We go for the anthropometric examination so that we can find out the body mass index, the skin fold thickness, in the triceps region, and so that we can determine whether the person is obese or not. We also examine for the waist hip ratio. We do the craniofacial examination, because as we have already discussed, the people who are having craniofacial abnormality, they are at risk for obstructive sleep apnea. Then we go for the respiratory examination, because people with the pulmonary disorders like COPD, ILD, they are at high risk for having sleep apnea. Then finally, we give a patient a sleep log or the sleep diary, and finally we expose the patient to the polysomnography, which helps us in finally objectively defining sleep apnea. Next slide, please. But it is to be understood that the children who might not be having craniofacial abnormalities, who might not be obese, but they are having the adenotonsillar enlargement, they are also having sleep apnea. So, in the children, it is important that you peek inside their mouth cavity to ensure that they are not having the adenotonsillar enlargement. Next slide, please. So when we examine these patients, we find a lot of findings. So on the left upper panel, you can see the person is having a lot of fat in below the chin. So this is the double chin in these patients. They are at high risk for developing the obstructive sleep apnea. If you peep inside the mouth on the right side panel, you can see that uvula is large and inflamed. So these patients, they often have large inflamed uvula, and inflammation is also seen in the soft palate because it keeps on fluttering throughout the night during snoring. And you can also see the macroglossia. Next slide, please. Now, when you look at deep inside their mouth cavity, you can see that the hard palate is high arched. So, and you cannot see the uvula and the posterior pharyngeal wall in most of the patient, as you can see on the left side of the panel. And these patients, they are having large tongue, which is known as macroglossia. On the right lower panel, you can see in the right nostril, the patients might be having some kind of deviated nasal septum or nasal spur. Next slide, please. Then we go for the respiratory examination to see if they are suffering from either COPD or ILD, which can reduce the patency of the upper airway by influencing the lower airway. Next slide, please. Then we go for the polysomnography or the sleep study. Now, when we look at the sleep study, next slide, please, we have multiple kinds of sleep studies. So it can be a home-based sleep study or it can be a in-lab sleep study. So in-lab sleep study is considered the gold standard for the diagnosis of all the sleep disorders. Now, once we have diagnosed the obstructive sleep apnea using the sleep study, how do we treat it? So there are multiple modalities which are available. There are certain dental devices which are known as mandibular advancement devices, and they pull the jaw forward. Then there are certain surgeries which can be done on the soft tissue as well as the hard tissue. And finally, we have certain machines which are known as the PEP machines, and which can actually create a kind of air splint. And these machines, they blow the air with the pressure in the upper airway to maintain the patency of the upper airway. and which can against which the patient can breathe normally. Next slide, please. So these are the mandibular advancement devices which are custom made. The patient wear it, and as you can see on the lower panel, these devices they pull the lower jaw forward, and it helps in maintaining the patency of the upper airway, as you can see in the lower panel. Next slide, please. Now, for the people who are suffering from the bony abnormality, as you can see on the left side of the panel, the bony surgery is done. So by the bony surgeries, the lower jaw is pulled forward, which increases the girth or the lumen of the upper airway. And for certain patients, we can go for the palatoplasty. As you can see here, the upper right panel, that the palate and the uvula they have been removed, and it increases the lumen of the upper airway. For some patients who are having the large tongue, as in the right lower panel, you can see the portion of the tongue is removed, and that actually increases the lumen of the upper airway. But the problem with these soft tissue surgeries is they lead to fibrosis and resumption of the sleep apnea in nearly 50% of the cases within an year. Next slide, please. So finally, we have the PEP therapy. So as you can see in the upper left panel, this mask is applied on the nose, and it blows the air with the pressure, and this pressure is determined through the sleep study, and we try to find out what is the optimal pressure which can keep the upper airway open. On the left upper panel, you can see that when the adequate pressure is applied, it keeps the upper airway open, and now the patient it can breathe normally against this open airway. Next slide, please. And as we discussed that the neural stimuli they also play a role in maintaining the upper airway. So recently, the hypoglossal nerve stimulation has been tried, and as you can see here, this is a kind of you can see the pacemaker which is placed and by the surgical technique, and is attached to the hypoglossal nerve, and it gets stimulated during the sleep. So it gives a stimulation to the hypoglossal nerve, and it increases the patency of the upper airway, as you can see on the right side of the panel. And you can compare it with the lumen of the upper airway in the left panel. So when the nerve is getting stimulated, it increases the girth of the upper airway. Next slide, please. But more importantly, recently there have been some interest in the respiratory muscle exercising. These are the results from some of the one of the recent meta-analysis, in which have shown that exercises were.
20 मिनट तक मैं एयरप्लेन कर दूं चला
Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
वो 20 मिनट बंद कर दूं चला
So you can see here the respiratory muscle exercises, they were able to produce the effective intervention in the patient with obstructive sleep apnea, and they can actually reduce